Walk into any butcher's shop in 1955 and you entered a world of ritual. Sawdust underfoot, whole carcasses hanging in the window, and a man behind the block who knew your name, your family, and exactly how your mother liked her brisket cut. He aged your beef for 3 weeks, slipped an extra kidney in for nothing, and gave the children a slice of ham to keep them quiet. Supermarkets swept all of it away, cut by cut, until only the memory remained. Here are 25 things every old British butcher did that no supermarket would ever do today. Number 25. He wrapped your meat in newspaper and greaseproof, folding the parcel with the quiet precision of a man who had done it 10,000 times. First came the sheet of white greaseproof against the meat itself, then a wrapping of yesterday's paper for strength, sealed with a twist and handed across the counter still warm from the shop. In the 1950s, a family bought fresh meat 3 or 4 times a week, and every purchase left the shop as a neat brown bundle tucked under the arm. Children carried the parcels home, the ink smudging their fingers, the smell of raw beef mingling with the tang of newsprint. There was no plastic, no polystyrene tray, no film that sweated in the fridge. Today's supermarket meat arrives shrink-wrapped and sealed, sitting in its own pink liquid under fluorescent light. The butcher's parcel was clumsy, perhaps, but it breathed, and it never once pretended to be anything but honest. Number 24. He scattered fresh sawdust across the floor every single morning before the shop opened. The routine was sacred, a wide broom sweeping the pale wood shavings into an even carpet that soaked up the drips, the blood, and the wet of a working day. In the years after the war, nearly every butcher in Britain worked over sawdust, the smell of pine and cold meat becoming the very scent of the trade. It gave the floor grip, kept the tiles clean beneath, and made the shop feel like a place where real work was done. Sawdust footprints followed customers out onto the pavement, marking who had been for the joint. No supermarket would tolerate such a thing now, all sealed floors and mop buckets and health inspectors. Yet for a generation, the crunch of sawdust underfoot was the sound of a shop that took its craft seriously. Number 23. He sharpened his knife on the steel right in front of you, the blade singing against the rod in quick, practiced strokes. It was half a working necessity and half a performance, a flash of ceremony before the cut was made. The old butcher kept his knives keen as razors, testing the edge against his thumb, drawing the steel from his apron with a flourish that told you your meat was in the hands of a master. In the 1950s, a good boning knife might serve a man for 30 years, sharpened daily until the blade wore thin as a leaf. That ringing sound, sharp and rhythmic, was reassurance made audible. It said this man cared how the slice fell. Supermarket meat is cut miles away by machines in a packing plant, portioned and weighed by nobody in particular. The steel, the flourish, the pride of a blade honed by hand, all of it gone. Number 22. He gave the bones away for nothing, wrapping a great knuckle or a marrow bone in paper and passing it over with a wink. Bones were the foundation of the post-war kitchen, boiled for hours into stock that stretched a scrag of meat into soup for a week. A ham bone flavored a pot of pea soup, a marrow bone enriched a gravy, and the family dog got the rest to gnaw by the fire. Butchers thought nothing of it, for the bones cost them nothing and kept the customer loyal. In an age when the National Food Survey recorded households making broth several times a week, the free bone was quiet gold. Today, the supermarket sells you a tray of bones at a premium, marketed to a new generation discovering stock as though it were a novelty. The old butcher would have laughed to see people paying for what he once handed out with a smile. Number 21. He minced the beef fresh while you waited, feeding trimmed chuck through the hand-cranked grinder as the pink ribbons curled into the tray below. There was no mystery to what went in, for you watched him choose the meat, trim the sinew, and turn the handle with his sleeve rolled to the elbow. A pound of fresh mince in the mid-1950s cost around 1.06, and every scrap of it came from a cut you had seen with your own eyes. It smelled clean and cold and unmistakably of beef. Housewives took it home for cottage pie, for rissoles, for the Wednesday tea that stretched a little meat a long way. Supermarket mince comes sealed in a tray, blended from sources unknown, its fat content printed on a label because you cannot see the meat it came from. The butcher's mince needed no label because it needed no trust, but the man's own hands. Number 20. He kept the slate, chalking up what a hard-up family owed and settling on payday without a word of shame. In terraced streets where wages ran thin before Friday came, the butcher's book of credit was a lifeline, a quiet act of faith that fed children through the lean days of the week. He knew who was struggling, whose husband was off sick, whose pension had not stretched, and he served them all the same, marking the debt and trusting it would be paid. Oral histories from mining towns and mill towns alike recall the mother who sent her child to the butcher with a note, and the butcher who never once turned the child away. It was commerce built on knowing people, on trust worn smooth by years. No supermarket checkout has ever extended a hand like that. The slate has been replaced by the card machine, and something human was wiped clean with it. Number 19. He sold offal for pennies, laying out liver, heart, and kidney as everyday food rather than curiosities. In the 1950s, a portion of lamb's liver cost a fraction of a proper joint, making it the affordable answer to a family's hunger for meat and iron. The butcher trimmed it fresh, advised on the frying of it, and never blinked at a request for a pig's heart or a set of kidneys for a steak and kidney pudding. Offal was ordinary then, rich in nourishment and low in price, and no part of the animal went unsold. Children wrinkled their noses at the smell, but mothers knew its worth on a tight purse. Supermarkets have all but banished offal to a forgotten corner, sealed and unloved, its preparation a lost art. What was once the cheapest, most honest food on the counter has become a rarity most shoppers would not know how to cook. Number 18. He boned and rolled a joint to order, working the knife around the bone with a speed that made it look like sleight of hand. Ask for a rolled shoulder, a boned loin, or a joint tied for the pot, and he did it there and then, the string looping through his fingers in neat, even bands. It was skill learned over years of apprenticeship, the kind of butchery that turned an awkward cut into a handsome roast fit for the Sunday table. He knew which joints needed slow cooking and which would take a hot oven, and he prepared each one to suit. A boned and rolled joint in the mid-1950s cost little more than the bone-in cut, for the labor was simply part of the service. Supermarket joints come pre-cut, pre-tied, pre-packed, shaped by machine to a standard weight. The butcher shaped his to suit your oven, your family, and your Sunday. Number 17. He cut every chop and every slice to the exact thickness you asked for, no more and no less. Thin bacon for the frying pan, thick steak for the grill, chops cut to please a father who liked them generous. All of it decided at the counter by the customer and delivered by the blade. There was no fixed portion, no printed weight, no tray that dictated how much you took home. If you wanted 3/4 of a pound of stewing steak, he cut 3/4 of a pound and showed you the scale. If you wanted your gammon cut wafer thin, he set the slicer and obliged. This was food sold to a person, not to a shelf. Supermarkets offer the illusion of choice while dictating everything, from the weight of the pack to the thickness of the rasher. The old butcher let the customer decide, because the customer was the one who had to cook it. Number 16. He rendered fresh dripping and sold suet straight from the kidney, providing the fats that built the post-war kitchen. Beef dripping, strained golden and set firm, went into roast potatoes and Yorkshire puddings, and was spread on bread with a pinch of salt when times were hard. Suet, cut fresh from around the kidney and shredded at home, made the dumplings and the steamed puddings that filled hungry bellies through the winter. A tub of dripping cost pennies, and the suet often came free with the joint. The butcher knew his customers cooked with these fats daily, for the National Food Survey of the era recorded them as staples of nearly every household. Today, the supermarket sells packet suet stripped of its origin and dripping in a plastic tub beside the margarine. The fresh, fragrant fat of the old shop, scraped from the beast that morning, is a thing few shoppers have ever tasted. Number 15. He made faggots and haslet from the scraps, turning the humblest parts of the pig into food worth queuing for. Faggots came from liver, heart, and belly minced with onion, breadcrumbs, and sage, wrapped in caul fat and baked until rich and dark, served swimming in thick onion gravy. Haslet, that seasoned loaf of pork offal, was sliced cold onto tea-time plates with pickled onions and a smear of mustard. In the Midlands and the North, these were the pride of the butcher's counter, each shop guarding its own blend of pepper and herbs. A quarter of haslet cost under 9p in the 1950s, cheap enough for any budget yet flavorful enough to anchor a proper tea. Supermarkets could never replicate the character of a shop-made faggot, and so they simply stopped selling them. The recipes, passed between butchers for generations, faded quietly from the high street as the independent shops closed their doors. Number 14, he made brawn from the pig's head, simmering the whole thing for hours until the meat fell away and set firm in its own rich jelly. It was thrift raised to an art, a way of ensuring that nothing, not even the head of the beast, went to waste. The butcher shredded the tender meat, seasoned it with pepper and mace, and pressed it into a mold to cool, selling it by the wedge for a few pence a portion. Sliced onto bread with mustard, brawn fed families through the cold suppers of the week, its dense, porky flavor unlike anything else on the table. Oral histories recall the sight of the pig's head in the shop window, unsettling to some and ordinary to others. Supermarkets, with their bright aisles and squeamish shoppers, had no place for such a dish. When the butchers who made it retired, brawn all but vanished with them. Number 13, he delivered the order on the trade bicycle, that heavy black machine with the great basket bolted to the front and the shop's name painted on the frame. The butcher's boy pedaled through the streets in all weathers, dropping parcels of meat at doors where the housewife waited, calling greetings to the neighbors as he went. In the years before every family had a car, delivery was not a luxury, but a service the shop simply provided. The order was taken by telephone or in person, wrapped, weighed, and sent out on the bicycle to arrive in time for tea. Children remember the boy on the bike as a fixture of the street, as regular as the milkman and the coalman. Supermarkets have rediscovered delivery now, in vans tracked by satellite and packed by strangers. But the butcher's boy on his bicycle knew every house on his round and every family behind every door. Number 12. He scrubbed the great wooden block with salt and a wire brush at the end of each day, cleaning the timber that had served the shop for decades. The block was the heart of the trade, a slab of end-grain wood worn into a gentle hollow by years of the knife, and it was tended like a treasured thing. Salt drew out the moisture and the blood, the stiff brush lifted the grain clean, and the wood was left to dry, ready for the morning. A good block might last 50 years or more, passed from one generation of butchers to the next, each cut adding to its history. There was pride in a clean block, a mark of a man who respected his craft. Supermarket meat never touches wood at all. Sliced instead on stainless steel in a distant plant. The scrubbed and salted block, worn smooth by a lifetime of honest work, has no place in the modern aisle. Number 11. He advised you exactly how to cook the cheap cuts turning a tough piece of meat into the secret of a good supper. Ask for something to feed a family on little, and he pointed you to the shin, the scrag end, the ox cheek, and told you plainly that it needed hours of slow cooking to reward you. He knew his trade from the animal to the plate, and he passed that knowledge across the counter for nothing. A tough cut of brisket, browned and braised as he instructed, fell apart tender by Sunday tea time, tasting far richer than any quick-cooked steak. This was expertise given freely, the butcher as teacher as much as tradesman. Supermarkets sell the meat and leave you to guess. A printed cooking guide on the back of the pack, the closest thing to advice. The old butcher knew that a well-cooked cheap cut kept a customer coming back, and so he taught you to cook it right. Number 10. He dressed the shop window like a work of art, arranging the meat in displays that stopped people on the pavement. Joints stood in gleaming rows, sausages coiled in neat spirals, and a whole side of beef might hang in the glass, with sprigs of greenery and paper frills to soften the sight. At Christmas, the window became a spectacle. Turkeys and geese, and great ribs of beef laid out with rosettes and holly, a display that drew the whole street to admire. The butcher took quiet pride in this daily arrangement, for the window was his advertisement and his signature both. Passers-by judged a shop by its window, and a good one meant a good butcher. Supermarkets stack their meat in identical trays under identical lights, arranged by planograms drawn up in some distant office. The butcher's window, composed fresh each morning by a craftsman's eye, was a thing of genuine beauty, now lost to the trade. Number 9. He made his sausages on the premises to a recipe he guarded like a secret. The mincer turned, the seasoning was mixed by feel and memory, and the meat was fed into natural casings that filled and twisted into perfect links before your eyes. Every shop had its own blend, its own ratio of pork to rusk, its own whisper of sage or pepper or nutmeg that made its sausages unlike any other on the high street. Regulars swore by their butcher's bangers and would travel across town rather than buy another man's. A pound of fresh sausages in the 1950s cost around a shilling, honest meat in an honest skin. Supermarket sausages are made by the ton in factories, uniform and forgettable, their recipes decided by cost accountants rather than craftsmen. The shop-made sausage, twisted by a hand that very morning to a recipe no one else knew, was a small masterpiece the modern aisle has never matched. Number 8. He made black pudding fresh, and in the north it was a source of fierce local pride. Slices of dark blood sausage, studded with cubes of white fat, were fried until the edges crisped and served with eggs and bacon for the Friday fry-up. In Lancashire and Yorkshire, every pork butcher had his own recipe, guarded and perfected, and customers argued over whose was best with the passion of a football rivalry. By the mid-1950s, nearly every northern high street boasted a butcher selling black pudding by the link, its rich, earthy flavor as familiar as the factory whistle. The making of it was skilled and messy work, done in the back of the shop with ingredients that supermarkets would never handle. The shrink-wrapped versions that later appeared on refrigerated shelves were pale imitations, stripped of character. Artisan black pudding enjoys a revival now, but the everyday shop-made link that anchored northern breakfasts has largely gone. Number 7. He told you which farm the animal came from, and often knew the farmer by name. In the age before national supply chains, meat traveled short distances, from local field to local abattoir to local shop, and the butcher could tell you the beast's provenance as easily as its price. He knew whose cattle grazed which fields, which farm raised the best lamb, and which pig had come from up the road that week. This was traceability built not on a barcode, but on a handshake and a lifetime in the same community. Customers trusted the meat because they trusted the man, and the man trusted the farmer he had known for 30 years. Supermarkets now print country of origin on a label and call it transparency. The animal reduced to a code and a nation. The old butcher could point out the window in the rough direction of the farm and tell you the farmer's name. Number 6. He broke down the whole carcass in-house, taking delivery of great sides of beef and whole pigs and reducing them to every cut the shop would sell. This was the true heart of the trade, the skill that took years to master, the ability to see the joints hidden within the carcass and free them cleanly with the knife and saw. Nothing arrived pre-cut or pre-packed, for the butcher made every chop, every joint, every scrap of mince from the animal himself. He knew the beast from nose to tail and wasted not an ounce of it, turning the prime cuts into roasts and the humble ones into sausages and faggots. Supermarket meat arrives at the store already portioned in a central plant, the skill of whole carcass butchery vanishing with the shops that once practiced it. The man who could break down a side of beef by hand is now a rarity, his craft an endangered thing. Number 5. He trimmed the fat and gristle exactly to your taste, and wasted nothing in doing it. Some liked their chops lean, some liked a good rim of fat for flavor, and the butcher trimmed each to suit the customer standing before him. The scraps he cut away were never thrown out, but saved for mince, for dripping, for the sausage bin, every last piece finding a use in the economy of the shop. He worked with the thrift of a man who had lived through rationing, when waste was close to a sin, and that habit stayed with the trade long after the ration books were gone. A joint left the shop trimmed to perfection, ready for the oven with nothing to spare. Supermarket meat is trimmed by machine to a standard that pleases no one exactly, the fat either stripped away entirely or left as the packer decides. The old butcher trimmed to the person, and the offcuts fed the shop. Number 4. He threw in a bit extra for nothing, slipping a spare sausage into the parcel or an extra kidney into the bag with a murmured word about summit for the cat. It was generosity dressed as afterthought, a small kindness that cost the butcher little but bound the customer to the shop for life. A regular who bought their meat there week after week could expect the scale to tip a touch in their favor, the odd bone thrown in, the ends of the ham handed over free. This was not charity but relationship, the understanding that a shop and its customers looked after one another. Oral histories are full of these small mercies. The butcher who always had a little extra for the widow, the family, the child sent on an errand. Supermarkets deal in exact weights and precise prices, every gram accounted for by the scanner. No till has ever slipped you an extra chop with a wink. Number 3. He hung and dry-aged the beef for weeks, letting the great sides mature in the cold room until the flavor deepened and the meat grew tender. This was patience made edible, the slow work of time transforming a fresh carcass into beef of a richness the modern shopper has rarely tasted. Hung for 2, 3, sometimes 4 weeks, the meat lost moisture and gained an intensity that no quick process could replicate. The outer crust trimmed away to reveal the dark, tender flesh beneath. The butcher knew exactly when a side was ready, judging by color and smell and the wisdom of years. Dry-aged beef was simply what beef was, before the trade learned to hurry. Supermarkets sell meat wet-aged in vacuum packs, sped to the shelf to save the cost of hanging, its flavor a shadow of the aged joint. The weeks of patient hanging, the craft of the cold room, all sacrificed to the speed of the supply chain. Number 2, he gave the children a slice of ham to keep them happy while their mothers were served. It was a tiny ritual repeated in 1,000 shops, the butcher reaching for a sliver of cooked ham or a bit of luncheon meat and passing it down to the small face at the counter's edge. Children grew up with the taste of the butcher's ham and the memory of the man who always had a treat for them, a kindness that made the weekly shop a pleasure rather than a chore. It cost the butcher a scrap and earned him the loyalty of a family for a generation, for the child who was given ham grew into the customer who bought the Sunday joint. This was commerce softened by warmth, a shop that knew its customers as people from the youngest to the oldest. No supermarket has ever handed a child a slice of ham across the deli counter and asked how their mother was keeping. Number 1. He knew you by name, and he saved your cut. This was the thing that supermarkets could never replicate and never will. The simple human knowledge of a man who served the same families for decades. He knew that Mrs. Jones liked her brisket boned, that the family at number 12 had the same order every Friday, that a certain customer always came for a bit of skirt on a Thursday, and he set it aside before they arrived. He remembered your name, your children's names, the illness in your family, the wedding coming up, the funeral last month. The butcher's shop was a place of conversation as much as commerce, a thread in the fabric of the street, and the man behind the block was a neighbor before he was a tradesman. Supermarkets know your loyalty card number and your purchase history, tracked and analyzed by a computer that has never met you. The old butcher knew you, and that knowing was the heart of everything he did. Across all 25, from the newspaper parcel to the man who knew your name, these vanished habits tell one story. The old butcher sold meat, but he traded in trust, in skill, and in the small daily kindnesses that bound a shop to its street. Supermarkets gave us convenience and lower prices, and in return we handed over the block, the slate, the free bone, and the man who saved your cut. Some things you cannot shrink wrap. If your family had a butcher like this, tell me his name in the comments, because these men deserve to be remembered.